Did you hear Ken Starr last hour? What did you think of his observations there?
I agree with him that this is in the oversight area. I disagree with him that there's no basis for an allegation for impeachable behavior on the part of the president. The president has admitted to holding up nearly $400 million in aid until he got a political favor, his word, favor, from the president of Ukraine. That is arguably impeachable. But once the president released the transcript, a document that was classified, which he declassified, this issue of is the whistleblower's complaint based on hearsay is now moot, because the best evidence is the transcript itself, and the president acknowledges that those are his words.
This is Fox News' senior judicial analyst Judge Napolitano cutting through the typical Fox noise and stating outright that Trump's actions are arguably impeachable. And that's because there is proof, definitive proof, that Trump committed a crime. He held up $250 million in military aid to Ukraine, aid that had been legally allocated by Congress so that they would be able to counter Russian aggression in exchange for the favor of investigating Joe Biden. During the phone call, Trump said the words, "We do a lot for Ukraine, we spend a lot of effort and a lot of time. The United States has been very, very good to Ukraine," which is a clear reference to that assistance, both financial and otherwise. Ukrainian President Zelensky himself, who understood that Trump was referencing military aid, thanks him for the U.S.'s support in the area of defense, and then offers to purchase javelins from the U.S. when Trump says the words, "I would like you to do us a favor though," before asking him to look into conspiracy theories about the DNC and Joe Biden. The wording of that sentence, "I would like you to do us a favor though," signifies a quid pro quo. That's how the English language works. And Trump, who as we know has the best words, clearly knows that. But don't take my word for it.
President Zelensky says we are almost ready to buy more javelins from the United States for defense purposes. And President Trump replies, "I would like you to do us a favor, though."
Well, you just added another word.
No, it's
you said,
in
"I'd
the
like
transcript.
you to do a favor, though"?
Yes, it's in the White House transcript.
That Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy couldn't fathom Trump using a word so blatantly incriminating is a testament to just how bad this is for Trump. And it was only after this call that suddenly the funds were released to Ukraine, along with an extra $140 million that even President Zelensky said he didn't expect. And look, I'm not calling it a bribe. Yeah, no, it's a bribe. Granted, what would the Trump administration be if not a propaganda machine constantly working to sow misinformation? In a desperate effort to justify Trump's behavior, the White House has been on overdrive carrying water for the president. In fact, whereas the Trump campaign typically spends about $200,000 a week on Facebook ads, they've ramped spending up to over $1 million in just the last week as news of Trump's scandals exploded. Now, their strategy can be summed up generally as throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. The White House has pointed to Joe Biden, to the deep state, and most recently, claiming that because the whistleblower's complaint isn't based on first-hand information, that it's tantamount to hearsay. But Trump released his transcript of the call and corroborated everything the whistleblower complaint said. In other words, he proved the complaint correct and rendered moot his own argument that it's all hearsay. And by the way, that's not the only part of the whistleblower complaint that's been corroborated. Aside from it asserting that Trump discussed opening an investigation into Joe and Hunter Biden with the president of Ukraine, the complaint asserted that the Trump administration withheld $250 million in military aid to Ukraine. That turned out to be true. The complaint asserted that Giuliani had been circumventing national security protocols by acting as his own State Department to facilitate the investigation into Biden. That turned out to be true. The complaint asserted that the White House intervened to lock down all records of the call by placing them in a separate electronic system that's reserved for classified information. That turned out to be true. So while I understand Trump's desire to attack the whistleblower to save himself, this could not be more of a losing battle. The fact is that there really is no way for the White House or Trump's mouthpieces to spin this, and their repeated efforts to do so only make their desperation more apparent. And with recent polling showing a massive influx of Americans now supporting impeachment, with Trump's favorite television network calling his actions impeachable, and with Congress moving quickly and aggressively to hold him accountable, Trump's continued strategy of lying and obstructing doesn't quite seem to be working anymore.